This is In the Middle with Josh and Sarah Siders. We get it. You're probably going through something that's asking you to dig deep, think differently, and hold on against the odds.
So these are our thoughts about starting new things, shutting some things down, and being with you, right there in the middle.
Welcome back to the In the Middle podcast, the podcast for those of us who haven't arrived yet. I'm Sarah.
And I'm Josh. It is. It's so good to have you all. What?
It's good to have you.
And it's good to have you.
It's good to have us
I appreciate
here back
that.
in the middle of the couch.
It's like we've done this so long that I say a word like, "Hi, I'm Josh," and you
It's
laugh.
funny.
That's great.
I'm sorry.
We've got that spark. It's still alive.
That spark.
So
Yeah. So this week's sponsor?
yes, we have a sponsor, right?
We do. We have a sponsor.
Yeah.
We always have a
What's
sponsor.
our-
We
what-
are well sponsored.
What's our sponsor? For
Our
this week?
sponsor is Fluffy Blankets. Thank you, Fluffy Blankets, for when you want a hug, but like nobody wants to give you a hug, which happens when you have a teen, tween, introvert household. So Fluffy Blankets.
That's right.
Yeah.
I think the dog would always like a snuggle, but
Yeah, maybe.
The cat
but
definitely
but
not.
sometimes he just stands there.
and he kind of, he smells
And the
like a
cat,
dog. So-
yeah, it's like, yeah.
But sometimes you need a hug, you need a snuggle,
Mm-hmm.
but sometimes you don't want to touch anybody, or nobody wants to touch you. So,
Yeah,
like,
rude.
that's where
the ones. I mean, I'm not gonna we're not officially sponsored by Pottery Barn, but the blankets that my mom bought for us for Christmas are A+.
yes.
Oh my
You'd
gosh!
like drop an affiliate link or something.
Yeah, I know we should. Anyways,
Anyways.
oh my gosh, so good. And it's a good thing that Fluffy Blankets has decided to sponsor us today because apparently Punxsutawney Phil says 6 more weeks of winter. However,
Yeah.
Staten Island Chuck. Do you know that Staten Island Chuck is the unsung hero of winter? He is also a groundhog
Oh,
with an 85% accuracy rate.
that's amazing.
And he
Okay.
says that winter is on its way.
All right, Chuck's my man. We're going
Punxsutawney
with
Phil's only like a 35%.
Oh, yeah. No.
Yeah. So I think that we need to do another, like maybe a reboot of the original
Yeah, I think so.
with Bill Murray, of course. Mm-hmm. And this time in Staten Island.
You know the irony of saying we need a reboot of Groundhog Day? I love it.
I did not recognize the irony when I said it, and I'm not happy about that.
Yeah.
I would like to be the person who would notice.
Yeah. Sorry. I'll do it first.
No, it's good.
It would have dawned on you later.
It would have. I would have been like, a reboot of, oh my gosh. Anyway, we almost watched it with the kids.
Yeah.
We couldn't quite nail down a Bill Murray movie,
No.
and we ended up watching
Speed.
Speed.
Keanu Reeves, Sandra Bullock, Jeff Daniels.
It doesn't even make sense.
No, it doesn't. It
Was about like 90s movies.
Yeah. That's
And
what
it was like a short list. And we're like, the kids
guys,
were like, we haven't seen
gotta
this
watch
one.
Speed.
Yeah. There's
good.
all the Bill
It was
Murray
good.
stuff from the 80s and 90s. The kids have seen it.
Yeah.
They really have.
Probably not all of it.
Okay,
There's
some
that they
that's probably
cannot
not
see.
appropriate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For
From the
sure.
90s? Okay,
Yeah.
I don't know.
80s.
80s. Okay. Well, I'm just thinking about, Man Who Knew Too Little.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Okay.
Christmas Carol.
Yeah.
So good. What about Bob?
You mean Scrooged, but yeah. I got
Scrooge.
you.
Yep.
Yeah, those are good.
And Groundhog Day. Yeah. They've seen them.
Yeah.
Anyways, Staten Island Chuck, guys. He's getting my loyalties.
Yeah.
So this is part 2. Today's conversation
two?
is
Yeah.
part 2 of the things I wish I would have known / paid attention to.
That's right.
Last week we got into the things that people told us
Yeah.
that's these people say, the things that are cliche.
We just thought we knew better.
We ignored it.
Right, yeah.
Like the
That's for
numb
those
chucks, numb nuts, numb numb
Numb
brains,
skulls,
numb skulls.
all the numb,
things
all the
that are
parts
numb, that are supposed to work. We were like dirt to dirt.
Yeah.
Here we go. And I mean, that's the thing. We talked a little bit about the advice that people give, the condescending tone in which people
Yes.
dispense said wisdom
it's tough to
that
get
makes
past
you
that.
want to reject it.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Especially if they're talking to people like us, which they
Yes.
were. Today's follow-up on the series is about the things you wish you would have known and acted on, but like literally no one said it. Or if they
Yeah.
said it, it was like so mysterious, so
Right.
intangible that it didn't feel like it applied. It didn't feel real.
Yeah.
It felt like it was in the infinite future.
Right.
So, yeah, I would be curious for you, like just diving in. What was maybe one or two things that kind of
Yeah.
stand out as like, oh my gosh, that really surprised me.
Yeah.
I got my legs kicked out from under me. Yeah.
For me, there's one big one that sticks out that really relates to this podcast. It's that no one told me that midlife would start so soon.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like there's the conventional wisdom of midlife is for old people.
Midlife is for people in midlife.
Yeah.
Which is far away.
It's far away.
Yeah.
So we talked a few episodes ago, maybe 5 or so, about Arthur Brooks and his book From Strength to Strength. And it's a book about transitioning through midlife. And he brings up some research that he did where if you ask most people, when does midlife start, that sort of thing, they're thinking 70s, later, much later,
What?
60s, or when does old age start, that sort of thing.
Okay.
And the reality is, like when you look, he looked at the brain research, some of the ways we think, and some of the mental decline, the intellectual decline that starts to happen. It's actually in the 30s.
Ugh.
And so that's when midlife
30-year-olds
actually
beware.
starts to transition in.
Yeah.
It's because there's what's called fluid intelligence, where that's your kind of creative abstract thought that hits its peak in the early 30s. And then there's what's called crystallized intelligence. That's your kind of retrieval system really gets activated and peaks much later in life. And just talking from a mental brain research standpoint, transitioning to mid-age well and then the later stages of life happens when you can transition from fluid intelligence to crystallized intelligence. This stuff had not been well known. And if anybody told us, we didn't pay attention or we just didn't hear it. But yeah, midlife. And usually think about midlife and a midlife crisis. And that's like people, older. And
Feels
the
like
reality
50s.
is, yeah,
People
totally.
think
But
50s.
the thing is, like, there's a lot of people that aren't having the same midlife crisis. A midlife crisis means I buy a sports car and leave my
Right.
wife for a younger woman.
Yes.
There's plenty of people that are not doing that
Right.
and have never done that, would not think to do that.
Yeah.
And yet the crisis doesn't spare them. Like there are things that happen in middle age, and it begins to happen in your 30s. I just was totally unprepared and really confused about what it means, not just from brain research standpoint, but the holistic effects of midlife settling in to that transition. There's physical changes that obviously happen. There's like, we talk about 30-year-old versus 40-year-old energy.
Yes.
Right? Like
Yes.
I don't have that same, I can burn the candle at both ends. I can, stay up till 3, get up at 6 and be good to go. I can eat what I want, drink what I want. It's like, man, that stuff really hits if you're not taking care of it or being aware of it. And so I wish I would have known what I know now 10 years ago. I wish I would have been prepared better, differently. I think along with that, your relationships change, and I was not prepared as much for that. Like your circle really gets a lot smaller, I think, in midlife.
Yeah.
Like you kind of have this wider, like I'm an introvert. I still, had a wider social net, people that I could just meet up, have coffee, drop, text every once in a while, or just kind of like chit chat, shoot the breeze. But when you've been through some stuff, you've been through some betrayal, you've kind of like, your gut says one thing and you kind of shove it down about somebody, you realize like, no, I can read people better than I thought. I can trust my wife to tell me, okay, what's up with that person? And so
You can.
your circle of like, not because it's like hard to trust, but it's because like my time is precious and my life is short. So I'm not going to
my
like deal
gosh.
with
Yeah.
people the same way that don't deserve to be trusted or won't refuse to clean up the messes that they make.
Yep.
And so your circle dwindles because it's like, okay, these are the people that I can rely on. These are the people that I'm going to show up for and will show up for me.
Yeah.
These are the people that I don't want to take for granted. And you start to really, I think, value that in a different way. So it's a little bit related, but kind of not. I just wish somebody would have told me, like, be ready for that, because there's a lot of grief that comes with that. Like I can't juggle all the commitments. I can't do everything I want to. I can't meet up with the people that and so, yeah, that's, I think, particularly that it starts so soon, and secondarily, that your relationships change and shift. And so be ready for that. And that's okay. That's a part of it, of what's going on. So
Yeah.
I'm curious. So for you,
Yeah.
as you process this, what do you wish somebody would have told you? What do you wish you would have known?
Yeah. I mean, I definitely relate with what you're saying. I'm kind of trying to integrate it a little bit. Like, it's like, is that how I would say,
Yeah.
My part? Yeah, I think the thing that's coming to mind is that Tim McGraw song, My Next 30 Years. And he sang it when he was in his 30s, and I think I was in my late teens, and I was like, oh my gosh, 30. See, 30 seemed old then
I know.
when he sang that song. And, I think he's now towards the end of his next 30 years. I think he's in his like mid to late 50s now, which is just incredible to me. And when you think about time broken up that way, like 90 years is a long life. It's like you have those thirds. And
Yeah.
I've heard people talk about the middle third.
Yeah.
The middle third starts when you're 30.
Yeah.
And I think we were starting to have kids. I think a lot of people are in a stage where in their 30s, they do have that ramping up energy.
Right.
And, I felt like the building that we were doing and the challenges that we had in our 30s were like steps up, right? It was hard. We had to scramble. We had to suffer. We had to, struggle up, but we were going up, right? It felt like you struggle upward. And I think that I was not aware of the concepts that, Richard Rohr calls it the falling, the critical journey. Janet Hagberg calls it the wall. These places of breakdown that they are in many ways universal.
Yeah.
I thought, like you mentioned, the midlife crisis. It was like, I'm not going to, leave my husband and, go out wearing a leopard print skirt to some
We appreciate that.
bar.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't. Yeah. This is what people picture.
Right.
And
right.
it's so weird because I think the term somehow got coined around this time.
Yeah.
And it's like, why did people in the agrarian or during the industrial era not have midlife crises?
Yeah.
And if they didn't, what were they doing? I think when you look back at the literature, the sacred, some like sacred writers like Teresa of Avila or St. John of the Cross, you're seeing them talk about this thing called the dark night of the soul.
Right.
And midlife for someone who is in the Middle Ages or who's in these different points in history, maybe that was 25. Maybe they lived to be 40. Maybe they lived to be 60. Maybe so 30. And so depending on, modern medicine and culture, midlife shows up at different points. But it's a place in the lifespan of a person that, these wisdom writers, modern and ancient, have talked about this.
Yeah.
You even have these like references in poetry books that are allegorical, like the Song of Solomon, where, there's this connection and this, these two like lovers are connected and then they're separated. And there's this disorientation in that space. And that's meant to like represent the Christian journey of feeling lost, feeling confused in the middle. And I think even though I'd heard about these things, and even though I'd read these Catholic writers and understood Song of Solomon in allegorical context. I don't think like you. I wasn't ready for it to start in my 30s.
That's right.
The nutritional, the weight gain that started in my mid 30s.
Yeah.
I had been very thin, my whole life. My weight had never been an issue. People would say, wait till you get older. I'd say no. And 35, the digestive stuff, the gut health really hit.
Yeah.
Couldn't recover from that. And then getting into my late 30s, part of what I viewed as success in all the stepping stones that I had done with my business and getting connected in the community. And I thought those were the upwards, right? It was like, that was just me climbing up to a higher point from which to plummet, right? In terms of my expectations, right? There was just a series of things where I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to recover from this hard thing and it's going to look like this. It's going to be this kind of a recovery. It's going to be me, being validated, me being justified, people seeing me come through, people seeing me succeed. I'm going to have my comeuppance, my vindication will be public.
That's right.
Yeah. Is that a thing? What is it? Like the something will be, the resistances
Will be televised.
Yeah, or something like that.
Right.
I was like, my vindication will be televised.
That's right.
Punks. And it was not, it was just, it felt like I could not get a grip. And so I think like what tends to happen is that when you ignore, I think most people, except that, there's a few wise ones, but most people are going to ignore this idea of the falling, this idea of the wall, this idea of the dark night of the soul. They're going to think even that they've gone through it in their 20s or 30s. They're going to think, oh, this must be that. And so they're going to not really know. They're not going to dive in. And I think the time that you dig in and you name it and you go, oh, that's what this is when you're in it.
Yeah.
I don't think you really are ever prepared. So yes, do I wish someone had told me?
I know.
But I know for sure I wouldn't have listened because I was so intent on proving people wrong that the rules didn't apply to me.
Yeah.
I mentioned that last week, but man, I was so gung-ho about that. And I have done that in a lot of scenarios. I've been able to prove that the rules didn't apply to me. But in these cases where it's like, this is the path that a soul goes on, this is the pilgrimage, and this is the valley in the middle, and you don't get to escape it.
Right.
You do not get to escape it. If you are moving toward God, if you are moving toward healing, if you're moving toward wholeness in the world, then if you're on the pilgrimage, there's a valley in this point, at some point in the middle. And it's not like when you hit 40. It's I don't know.
It reminds me, just for a moment, reflecting on your response and mine. Have you heard of the Dunning-Kruger effect?
I just saw something about it. Like people think they're experts, but they're not.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And I was reminded of it by a friend, Michael Ashford. And it's basically, there's a inverse proportionality to being sure of something. Whereas like the more sure you are about a subject, the less experienced you probably are in it, because the more experienced, the more you realize I don't actually know. So the experts are the most unsure ones,
Wow.
So
wow.
I think
Yep.
I think that's really, I think in the first stage of life, the first season of life, first half of life, like you're so sure about so many things, and
it's adorable.
It's like this, your ego strength can't handle being told, yeah, you're wrong, or just wait, or like it gets really, hard.
Right.
It's like, oh no, I got this. Like I'm doing so well. Look at all this stuff. Stuff is up and to the right. Let's go. So quite a bit of humbling that comes along.
Yes.
To take your legs out from under you. But I think what makes you is, are you willing to get up from that? Are you willing to keep going? No matter what, are you willing to look like a fool? Are you willing to be publicly humiliated and then, get up and keep going?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's hilarious. It reminds me of a Western civ, I think it was Socrates or somebody who was like, essentially the person who knows the most knows they know nothing.
Yeah.
No, the more you know, the more you realize you know nothing.
Yeah.
And that like life will humble you. And if you aren't being humbled, then maybe you're not even living. Maybe you're not challenging yourself. Maybe you're not even putting yourself out there. I think that that's the thing, the humbling of it. I'm wondering about this idea, though, of the purpose that we make from the humbling and from our lives. Like how do you recover if you don't have a sense of purpose? I know for us, we discovered literally just, wow, what a gift from your friend, the book, The Critical Journey. And we were both kind of just having these really hard time. And we discover this framework and we go, oh, that's what this is. This feeling is the wall. And this is what you do. You engage with it by enduring it and by staying here and by not giving up your connection to God, even though you don't know what God is anymore. You just kind of get broken down and then you're going to come through. You're going to come through at some point, but you don't know what it'll look like. Yeah. And just having that language. If I hadn't had that language, I think about that so much. Like, what a gift, because the disorientation is really hard. And I had a framework at that moment, right? Like I didn't have it beforehand, but right when I needed it, we got it. So it's like, what do you do if you don't even know? How do you make meaning out of, I think if you don't have a sense of meaning and purpose when hard things happen, if you're not aware, like that Viktor Frankl quote that I reference a lot about how life is calling you up, life is challenging you, we rise to the challenge. Or the other types of meaning that we make from our lives. It's like, is it just hardship for the sake of hardship? Or what is happening inside of you? And like, I think that the valley is a geographic location of the soul, right? But it's also like a hollowing out. Mm-hmm. It's like, if I am going to build something bigger, then I have to like make a crater, right? I have to like dig something out. And the bigger that crater, that canyon is, the more that it can be filled. Right. And I think that's the part that happens in this, the hollowing out in this stage. It's so uncomfortable. The stuff that's being taken out you thought was essential. You don't know what's going to be filled. Nature abhors a vacuum, right? So you want to put something back in it. You want to be comfortable again. You want to shove that fluffy blanket right in there. That's where we get those midlife addictions. I think you get dopamine seeking. You get like cram. I want to put something in here. I'm so uncomfortable right now.
Or I want to numb out.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. And it's like, if we know that this is a part of our lives, and I'm using a Christian framework as this idea of a pilgrimage, but I think that a lot of people who maybe aren't Christians, who are trying to be good, trying to be spiritual, they're experiencing similar human development processes. So this would apply to someone who isn't a Christian or doesn't have faith or has a different faith. Like, this is a process we go through as humans. And so there's a Christian overlay here. But I think there's a hollowing out that happens at this stage. And I think if you know that, if you know it's about increasing capacity, if you know it's about resilience, if you know it's about endurance, if you know that on the other side of this is a version of you that will be more gracious, more kind, more compassionate. Like, you're like, I don't even care about that person. Like, I just want this to stop. Yeah. But having that there on a lot of days, you'll sign up again and it'll be comforting. If you don't have that,
it's true.
I'm like, we got to get this message out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, hey, you're not broken. This is how it goes.
That's right. You will look in a lot of wrong places. Yeah. Trying to find that meaning or perspective.
Yeah. Like, your life will dump you into the valley if you are a person in motion. So it's okay. Yeah. But like I know we had people to talk to. Yep. You had your friend who was a spiritual director, and I was talking to a therapist, and I've had a life coach. You had a therapist. Like, we've had people, right? Yeah. We've had friends who play these roles. Man, I feel so fortunate. Yeah. Even though it has been brutal, and maybe I don't know, but I think wisdom is like at this stage is going to say, yes, wisdom and humility go together. I know I don't know, or you're going to get there. I know I don't know, but I'm going to be willing to listen. I'm going to be willing to learn.
Yeah.
And I hope that, you know, depending on what stage you're at, maybe you're not here yet and you're like resisting this and it's like, oh, I don't want that. That's going to suck. Yeah, it's uncomfortable, but there is a purpose to it.
Yeah.
Doing it by yourself, doing it unguided, I would not recommend it. Nope. I'm like, get a spiritual director.
Yeah. Get a guide,
coach,
and
therapist.
The ultimate thing that I think the purpose of it, I think God's design is to create us to be guides for those coming up later.
Yeah, that's good.
It's not just about, oh, you'll be a kinder, gentler, more peaceable version of yourself. That is true, but it can't stop there. It's not, this isn't Project Self. This isn't just self-actualization.
Yep, that's good.
It's actually to raise you up to be the sage that you may or may not have had, to be the guide, to be the Yoda for someone else's Luke Skywalker. And that's how the cycle keeps going.
Yeah.
So that we have more people coming up that understand, like, this is the purge, like all self, all the ego, all the stuff that puts me at the center of the universe. It's to humble me, to create something beautiful in me, to be able to give away to somebody else.
Yeah. That's good, man. That's really good. I totally agree. It's not just about an attribute like, oh, good, you're compassionate.
Yeah.
It's like, but for what, right? Unto what?
Yeah.
So having it be about the role you're going to play.
Yeah.
And being able to have something of value to offer. You know, I mean, honestly, this is worth a whole another conversation on a different episode, because the lack of people who have not just aged but matured.
That's right.
Have decided to submit themselves to the process of becoming a sage. I mean, I think we're really fortunate because we have people in our church that are really trying to be on that journey, that are trying to engage with that wall, with the valley, in a way that's really meaningful and really authentic. And I think we're going to find ourselves surrounded by sages. I think millennials and Gen Xers are kind of like having these conversations, and I think there's going to be more of this, but there's still just like, I think for us, we've been like, whoa, not many very self-aware people out there that as they continue to grow, you feel like you're outpacing some of these people that you've needed to look to in the past. And you're like, oh man, I still respect what you've done and your contributions, and I'm grateful for all of that. But like, I need that kind of deep wisdom and humility.
I think
it's like, oof.
it is, it's painful for you to hit a lid in your growth journey.
Yeah.
It's also painful to watch other people hit theirs and kind of stay there. And I do think this transition into the second half of life is an invitation to bust through that. Yeah. But not everybody takes the opportunity.
I think if you don't know, like, I just really do think that it's partly like, if you don't have this model, then, how do you survive? I mean, the American church and a lot of pop psychology is very self-help. It's about self-actualization. Yeah. So it is upward, up the pyramid, right? Of Maslow's hierarchy towards self-actualization. So you have that model. You have Protestantism, which is so new, Enlightenment based, very much like it's got capitalism involved. It's got individualism involved. None of those things are Christian, right? At least not. There's tenets, but not holistically. And so when you have that, it's like you get this Christianity that is individualistic, that is upward and to the right, that becomes about self-actualization and the rights of self. And you don't get this idea that we see in, even the Catholic, the Anglican, the Orthodox, the Hebrew cultures that are like, hey, it's hard in the middle, FYI. heads up from the future, also the past.
Yeah.
Heads up from the past. And you just keep, going and thinking, well, I don't know, I live in a different time. That was for then.
Yeah.
So anyway, we've
good.
got to,
I'm digging into that some more.
I think the mentorship, the process of becoming a sage, we've talked about that a little bit, but worth revisiting.
Yes. Yeah. And it's worth keeping in the forefront for us.
Yes.
Too.
Yes.
So, with that, what are you reading, watching, listening to, and we'll share that, and then what's saving your butt.
Yeah. Honestly, I'm still working my way through Art of Gathering and Artist's Way. Oh, a lot of art. I have not been sticking with my Artist's Way stuff as well. I haven't been doing like the full 3 pages every day. And there's some other elements I need to be doing, but I am being pretty consistent overall with like the act of it. Yeah. So could make it more robust, but it's still holding me accountable. What about you?
Yeah. So I would this is kind of generic, but good. The Free Press. I'm reading that.
Oh, yeah.
There's been a lot that's happened since the inauguration, a little bit before that, and just kind of having that thoughtful engagement from a couple different angles where you can tell people have good rapport and they're really trying to bring out the best ideas.
Yes.
In a nonpartisan way. That's very helpful. Oh my gosh. I wouldn't say I read every article that comes across the feed, but I do peruse things and it's like, okay, I heard about that. What are some thoughts from different...
Yes, what are the takes?
I appreciate that so much. So I'm reading that. That could be considered what's saving my butt too, because it's just... It's not a distillation necessarily, but there are some different voices that help me. And it's voices where I'm like, ooh, I don't know if I've heard strange things about that person or their take, but okay, let's read and see what they have to say. So I'm going to do a twofer today. Is that allowable?
Yes.
I'm reading it and it's saving my butt. So there you go.
Dude, I love that. So I mean, I think what you read should save your butt.
There you go. So what's saving your butt?
I had it, and now I forgot.
Uh-oh.
Isn't that funny? Maybe it's not working that well.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm still leaning into analog reading in the evening, and I mean, my New Yorker keeps me so busy. It's got all this different stuff, so mostly I'm doing that. I highly recommend analog reading. Yeah. It's not great. Sometimes I'm doing stuff, but. Yeah, highly
slows
recommend.
You down and focuses you. It's really good.
Yeah, and relaxes, especially at night when you need to kind of get
really
off your screen.
Off the blue light.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
I think that's going to become more and more common. So, way to go.
I'd love to see that, but hopefully,
Yeah. Good.
Yeah.
Well, with that, thank you again for tuning in.
Yes.
And we appreciate, we want to hear from you. What's something you wish you would have known? So let's continue the conversation.
Yes.
And we'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, we'll be back here next week for the next episode of In the Middle. Until then, have a great week.
This is the In the Middle podcast with Josh and Sarah Siders. Visit inthemiddlecoaching.co for other resources, courses, and helpful tools.